Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and look at that, already 7,849 people in the chat room already. Whoa. These numbers, they're just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Hey, trying to bring a little levity here because I know there will probably be a couple sour folks out there after another game in which the Winnipeg Jets talk about lacking consistency. The only thing consistent about the Jets' last 5 games is that they are games in which someone won in dominant fashion. Sometimes, though, it's not the Jets, right? And actually, that's probably not fair to say. The game, those two Seattle Kraken games were probably fairly close. But, I mean, the Jets get pumped by Vancouver. They turn around and they absolutely feed the Washington Capitals their lunch. And then tonight, 4-2 score is flattering, even with Mason Appleton scoring late in that game to make it a 4-2 game. There was absolutely no doubt left who was the better team on this night. The Nashville Predators not just winning that game, not just extending their point streak to 13 games, a stretch over which they've gone 11-0-2, gaining, what is that? That's 24 of a possible 26 points. Not bad. The other thing about the Nashville Predators is, you know how the Edmonton Oilers are a team that was so bad out of the gate. They've basically been the NHL's best team since they turned things around. Well, Nashville Predators started the season 5-10 in their first 15 games. I mean, they were, kind of team that looks like they're out of it. And you can see the kind of hole you dig yourself into. They're just getting to the point where it looks like they're digging themselves out of it. But like right now, the Nashville Predators as a wild card team have a over plus 0.666 win percentage since that first 15 games. They've got the fifth best record in the NHL since that point, and they were still figuring it out at the top end there. Explanation to me coming from Ryan O'Reilly was that essentially this is a team that spent the first part of the year trying to figure out its system. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They figured it out. You saw it on display here against the Winnipeg Jets. Now, a lot of you are going to say, oh, the Jets decided not to show up and this and that and whatever. And maybe you're right. I don't think you're right. But here's what you have to take away from the Winnipeg Jets over the last little while, in which, their loss against the Seattle Kraken is one Rick Bowness didn't like the effort of the team, didn't like the defensive structure they had. Then the game against the Vancouver Canucks, Rick Bowness comes out and says it is the worst game that he's seen the Jets play in the 2 years that he's been here. And now the Winnipeg Jets come into this game. Clearly, Rick Bowness not happy about this one either. You got to look at this a number of ways. You got to look at it that if you think that this was just, the Jets not being pressed by a really good team right now, and it's just that the Jets failed to show up, which I know there's going to be a ton of people in the chat room who are just going to say, don't worry about it, move on to the next one. They just didn't show up. They didn't have their speed ball or their fastball tonight. If you want to go that route, then you have to be, presented with the idea that the Winnipeg Jets are failing to show up in big games, right? This is a big game. The Vancouver Canucks game is a big game. If that's the route you want to go, then you have to ask yourself why at this time of the year when the Winnipeg Jets are trying to lock down and had an opportunity tonight to move into first place in the Central Division, why are the Jets no-showing in big games? If that's the road you want to go down, nobody panic. The Jets didn't try, whatever. If you don't want to go down that road, then you have to kind of present yourself with the idea that the Winnipeg Jets are getting kind of steamrolled by pretty good teams right now. I don't know if you watched the broadcast. I don't know if you saw the opening, but listen, Christmas is a long time ago. Okay. We're talking December 25th. We're bordering on 3 months. The Winnipeg Jets now have played 12 games, ladies and gentlemen, against teams above the playoff line. Now, let's give credit where it's due. The Winnipeg Jets are waxing and dominating the lower half of the league. It's keeping them right at the point where they are still right there for first place in the Central Division. Since Christmas time, they've been doing a tidy bit of business. I think it's like 12-3-1 or something like that against teams below the playoff line. So give credit where it's due. I've said this in the past. A lot of the other good teams around the league are losing those games and finding a way to lose. The Winnipeg Jets are waxing the weaklings. Let's put it that way. not so much against the better teams. Okay. The Winnipeg Jets since December 25th have now played 12 games against teams who are currently above the playoff line, and they've won just 4 of those games. 4-7-1 in those games. One of those wins is the miracle comeback against the Carolina Hurricanes, which they were down 3-0. So not exactly, I said it on that day. I'll say it again. That's not a repeatable performance. The Winnipeg Jets open up that game. They're probably only going to win that game 1 time out of 10. They got their 1 win there. You got to take a look at what's happening with the Winnipeg Jets here, because Kyle Connor said it after the last game. Everything they do going forward is preparing to get ready for the playoffs, to be able to take this team on a long playoff run. And right now, the Winnipeg Jets have shown time and time again, whether you want to believe, and I think a lot of you are hoping and will choose to believe, that the Winnipeg Jets are a team that is, for whatever reason, failing to show up against the better teams in the NHL. And listen, I'll say this too, go through the losses. There's not a lot of those losses that it was a coin flip that the Winnipeg Jets just didn't come out in. The Winnipeg Jets, those 7 losses that I'm talking about in those games, go back and look at them. A lot of those are games the Jets really didn't perform that well in against those teams. One way or another, whether it's them not showing up in these games, whether it's the Winnipeg Jets struggling with good teams and the pressure they apply. And I think that's a conversation we should have on this show. I'm going to ask Ken about it. One way or another, the Winnipeg Jets right now are not playing good enough against good teams to leave you with the expectation that they will take themselves deep into the playoffs, because those teams have, for the most part, been beating the Winnipeg Jets and beating them handily. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in Ken with the best music in the business to get his take on the whole thing. Here comes Ken, everybody. Ken, the chat room's on fire already. Joe from Winnipeg says, only in Winnipeg do people hang their favorite shovel on their wall out of respect. Cranley, not so hopeful, saying both teams played their playoff game tonight, which would not bode well for the Winnipeg Jets if that was the case. But this one from Jerry Brown, I find extremely interesting, where he says, this is concerning. The Jets look like the frauds too often. Now, this is pretty interesting. This is an interesting commentary, because a lot of people in Winnipeg got their backs up when they heard this. And a lot of people thought, okay, well, we're going to show you, maybe, just maybe, this is exactly what's seen from the outside against the Winnipeg Jets, because there is no denying it at this stage. It's about 3 months now the Winnipeg Jets have been struggling against the upper echelon teams in the NHL. What's keeping them going right now and in the fight for first place in the Central Division is the fact that they've played about twice as many games against bottom 15 teams as they have against top 14 teams. This is pretty insightful, I think, by Jerry Brown to pull this up at this time. But regardless of that, Ken, get into it. What did you see in this game here tonight? Other than what I'm seeing right now, that pocket square, buddy, I'm just seeing it now.
There you go.
Frankie must have told you what to do with that, because the accent's picking up in the tie, the little bit of the, am I seeing an off blue color shirt there?
Good job, buddy. Yeah. Little kind of blue green, it goes with the suit piping,
I was going in a direction, and then that suit stopped me in its tracks.
As it should.
As is wont to happen with Vittorio Rossi clothing. So if you feel like stopping people in their tracks, you know what to do. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi, walk in, loudly proclaim that Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will put you in an outfit like Ken's wearing right now that will absolutely stop people in their tracks, make you forget that the Jets had a poor performance on a night like tonight. That kind of clothing. Ken, what'd you see?
Yeah, I mean, it was a poor effort. There's no doubt about that. I mean, whole frauds conversation we can have in the playoffs, and that's what ultimately the Jets will show what they're made of. But I mean, again, is there some room for cause for concern with how they played with the up down level of late? Sure. I mean, this team has 41 wins this season. Yeah, I mean, have they beaten up on some bottom dwellers? Yes, but I mean, they're also down to 17 games left, and they still have games against really good teams that will learn a little bit more about the Jets in those games, and they're also playing teams below the playoff line. So I don't see the Jets falling off the cliff here, but there's certainly areas where they need to tighten up. There's no doubt about that. I mean, in the first period, there were even when it was early in the game before there were odd man rushes that were just not the type of plays that we see from the Jets. Gustav Nyquist snuck behind Brendan Dillon. I mean, that we haven't seen that a whole lot this year. I mean, that was an unbelievable pass by Roman Josi.
Yes.
Really great play. We saw the Jets kind of have a couple more bobbles and mishandles and just kind of, they didn't have it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I don't want to we're not going to spend the whole show talking about Nashville, but I love the fact that Andrew Brunette was wearing a relentless hat this morning, and we saw why. I mean, that's totally this team's identity. Nashville was relentless at both ends of the ice. They won almost every single race. They won almost every single battle. They were excellent in almost every single area. They got great goaltending. They got timely scoring. Their stars were clearly stars in the game where the Jets' high-end players were lacking for the most part. We saw another night where Mark Scheifele's value to the Jets is so apparent. And it's such a reminder for the folks who wanted him shipped out the door last year of how valuable and how tough a player he would have been to potentially try to replace. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not out here saying the Jets are in big time trouble and they're going to be bounced in the first round for sure, because they're going through a little bit of a rough patch in March. I mean, they've built up enough goodwill over the course of the year. And the other thing for me, Sean, and we've been talking about this for a long time, and this is why I think that there's a big difference. I mean, when we have the debate about last year versus this year, like Dylan DeMello, the first thing that he said was, yeah, we weren't very good, but we know what we look like when we're a good team. We'll correct the mistakes. I mean, before, Jets were saying, no problem here, nothing to see here, just an off night. Where here there's an acceptance when the Jets don't play well enough, and they know they can identify the problem. So I don't think that self-analysis is being viewed through rose-colored glasses, but at the same time, the Jets have built enough of a foundation. You don't get to where they are in the standings, and you don't get to where they are in terms of being one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the NHL, goals against, all of those things, without being a legit team. And, you and I both talk to people around the league, Sean, scouts and people in management. I mean, people around the league respect the Jets, and that's not just lip service, right? I mean, but at the same time, there are a lot of great teams in the Western Conference. And right now, the Nashville Predators are looking like a team that wants to make the playoffs and brought a lot of urgency today. I didn't see the Jets match that urgency. It wasn't close. The second period, it wasn't close. They were down 2-0. You would think you would see some push from the Jets. They didn't have it today. They didn't have the ability to push back. I don't think it was taking their opponent lightly. I don't think it was a lack of respect for their opponent. They just didn't have it, and they didn't execute, and they played a poor game. And, they've got 17 games to show that these are more the exception than the rule. But like you said, we can't ignore the fact that there have been some hiccups here. And that's what, to me, I mean, we're going to spend a segment on it, but that to me was part of the, that's the red flag part, right? Hiccups are going to be part of every season. The Jets have had one bad losing streak. It was a 5-game losing streak. They played well, I think, in 2 of those 5. The games against Toronto, I thought they played well in both of them, got a point in one, could have won both, but they also could have lost both. So, was it perfect? No, but they responded well. Do they look like a team that had won 8 in a row? No, they look like that on Monday against Washington, but they haven't done that enough. They haven't stacked enough great teams, enough great games to show you what they were looking like, when they were rattling off that 8-game winning streak in, basically December. So I mean, of course, there are things where that they need to do better, and they'll be working on trying to get better. But from today, again, I'm not putting a ton of stock in this, but again, we're not also passing it off as nothing either. I mean, that's not the case. You can learn something from every game, but today, the Jets, not many players had a good outing. I mean, Mason Appleton, yes, great outing, involved, lots of chances, gets a reward late on a power play goal. Outside of that, I didn't see a lot of good from the Jets. There, Winnipeg Gabriel Vivaldi. I mean, the Jets look slow. Nashville made the Jets look slow. And Sean, to me, that is reminiscent of the old Jets. That was a little bit of old Jets DNA creeping in. Not to say the Jets are reverting to their old form, but this is a thing that we saw a couple years ago when the Jets were skating and getting to the hard areas. Always a tough team to play against. When they don't have their skating legs, Sean, they look average and often below average. Today they looked below average again, much like they looked below average on Saturday against the Vancouver Canucks. So what that means in the big picture, I'm not sure. Now, what that's going to mean playing Anaheim on Friday, again, it's part of the 82 game story. Not every game is a referendum, and we're not going to treat it as such, but we're also going to try to glean what we can from these games. And what we can glean from today is that the Jets weren't nearly good enough in any area of the game. And, they got outworked and they got out hustled. They got out muscled on a lot of occasions, and they got out skated in this game. And that, to me, those are sort of the biggest takeaways. But am I here to say the Jets can't beat good teams? I mean, what the record is, Sean. I mean, they were great against Vancouver in the first game. They had to rally in the game for sure. And they had to lean on Connor Hellebuck, who had 39 saves that night. It was a big night for Hellebuck. But I'm not here to, I know you're not saying this, but I'm not here to make a declaration that the Jets can't measure up against good teams. They've had lots of wins against good teams, but they haven't had enough lately. And that's how they're going to be measured when the real games start in April. So narrative or not, Jets have to play better against better teams. There's no doubt about that. If they can't play better against playoff teams, their playoff lives will not last very long. That's the bottom line. So it's up to them to start playing better in those big games.
I mean, to me, the numbers are just too obvious. At first, it was a stat, and we were talking about this, but
Sure.
this has gone on for too long. Like when you're talking about essentially 3 months that they've struggled to beat good teams, like at this stage, to me, the Jets are in full on show me mode, right? Because I've said this before, and someone talked about like their record against bottom 15 teams is dominant. Right. Like that's the thing about this. And I know that you'd said this, a slow patch in March doesn't define them or whatever, but that's not what's happening. The off and on right now isn't what's concerning to me. The off and on being the fact that when they're on, it's against lower echelon teams. And when they're off, it's against higher echelon teams. I'm at the stage now where I need to see the Jets go out and put up some good games and do it consistently against good teams. And who knows, Ken, like I'd said, since Christmas time, basically 2/3 of their games have come against bottom 15 teams. They're going to get another crack, against the Anaheim Ducks here in their next game. But I think I talked about it in this last one. People were looking last game and saying, in the chat room, oh man, they destroyed Washington and the Jets are back and this and that. And my take on it was like, Washington didn't look good in that game. Max Pacioretty looked terrible in that game. And it wasn't the Winnipeg Jets stealing his legs away from him. Alexander Ovechkin looked like a guy who was interested in doing nothing but getting a shot off and trying to score a goal, right? So my guess is the Jets are going to walk in. They're going to play the Anaheim Ducks. They're going to beat them. Maybe they're going to beat them handily. But the fact of the matter remains, I am fully on now a program where I need to see the Jets show up against good teams because they haven't for far too long. To me, this is not a rough patch in March. This is a pattern that's been established. And yes, you're right. At the beginning of the year, the Winnipeg Jets were winning against really good teams. Give the Jets credit. The Jets are where they are right now because they took care of business against good teams at the beginning of the year when their schedule was harder. And now that their schedule is easier, they're not falling asleep and driving off the cliff when they're playing, lower echelon teams. But I'm fully fully in the category now of needing to see what the Winnipeg Jets can do against really good teams, because they're not showing very well against them. And one thing that you had talked about here that I want to dig into a little bit more is you said the comment that the Jets looked slow. And I would argue that the Jets looked slow also when they played the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, for
I
sure.
would argue the Jets looked slow when they lost that game against the Boston Bruins after Christmas. If we go, I would argue they looked slow when they play the Dallas Stars. So to me, something about the Jets looking slow is having to do with losses against good teams. And I wonder about this. The Winnipeg Jets pressure game is on point when they're playing lower echelon teams. It was against the Washington Capitals. We know what the Jets look like when they've got their pressure game going. I'm wondering if what we're seeing against good teams, like we saw them play against tonight, is the fact that when they can't get their pressure game going, that they're not handling it well when they don't get to steamroll a team, and that when they're on their heels, they're having a hard time getting back on their toes.
Yeah, I would just put it this way, Sean. And the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is that we'll have plenty of opportunity to see what you want to see. Jets are playing the Rangers next week. They're going to play Colorado 2 more times. They're going to have Edmonton roll into town. They're going to have Vegas roll into town. So, again, I'm not dismissing the numbers by any stretch. What I am saying is that the Jets have not had Tyler Toffoli in their lineup when they've played Dallas yet. Am I expecting one player to make all the difference? That's not what I'm saying. But the best version of the Jets has not shown up against Dallas. Sean Monahan played 1 game against Dallas, 0 against Vegas. So the Jets have 17 games to get their best lineup and best foot forward going. Is that going to be enough? We'll find out. But the fact that they've been slow against those teams, that is absolutely concerning. You can be sure that it's concerning to the Jets coaching staff, and you can be sure that it's concerning to some of the Jets players. It's obvious that a lot of nights you can't win with your B game. I don't even think the Jets had their C game today. So that's why they got outworked and out-hustled and out-muscled and outscored. Now, does that mean they're going to struggle for the next 17 games? No, it does not. But they definitely need to be better. In terms of their pace, when their pace isn't there, it's just simple. They're a mediocre hockey team. And then on those nights, Sean, they need their special teams to bail them out, or they need their goalie to bail them out. And again, Connor Hellebuyck, was the second best goalie tonight. Yes, but that's not because he was terrible. It's because Saros played very well. But Hellebuyck, he got beat early on a couple chances. A couple of the chances are from the no chance hotel. Basically, the drop pass from Nyquist to Forsberg, forget about it. You got no chance on that. But, the fourth line goal where the Jets get outworked, that goal can't happen. And that's not on Hellebuyck. That's on the defensive play. The rebound goal, that's poor defensive play. So anyways, people are all, again, oh, well, Hellebuck's costing them. Well, Hellebuyck had a shutout on Monday. Yes, Lauren Brossoit had a shutout in his last game. He'll play on Friday against the Anaheim Ducks, as he should. So there's lots of games to go around for both goalies. The Jets didn't just fall off a cliff because their goaltending suddenly struggled. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that, yes, the Jets have been leaky defensively. Even with the shutout Monday, Sean, that's now 23 goals allowed in 7 starts for Connor Hellebuyck. Those are not Vezina caliber numbers. Now, let's also remember, Sergei Bobrovsky had his streak finally snapped yesterday of 12 in a row with 2 or fewer, but Florida came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Dallas Stars, who often look impenetrable, right? They gave up 4. So it's happening to a lot of good teams. But at the same time, the Jets need to elevate and start. The biggest thing, Sean, is their consistency is not there. There have been cracks in the foundation. That's not to say the Jets are abandoning their system. I don't see it that way. That's what they did last year. But what I do see is I don't see as firm a commitment. And in a game like today, I'm not making excuses. I'm saying the Jets got outplayed, outworked, outmuscled, outhustled. All of the things. That's not an excuse. They weren't good enough. They need to be better. What I am saying, though, is that I think they've banked enough goodwill. But at the same time, this is this month is a war of attrition. 17 games in 31 days. They're not all going to look great, but they need to look better than they look today. Otherwise, never mind first place. They're going to be in trouble to have home ice. Sean, right? If they don't start playing better against better teams, they're not going to be in a battle for first overall in the Western Conference. And even that, we just saw today what the reward for being first might look like. You think the Nashville Predators are an easy out in the first round? Not a chance. You touched on it. I was talking to Barry Trotz before the game, Sean. You said the record out of the gate. They're way over 500 after that terrible 5-10 start.
Started 5-10 start,
right?
And then after that, like the way I wanted to describe it on the broadcast is they may be like a sleeping giant in plain sight, right? Because we look at them when we think, oh, they're on a good streak and they're a pretty good team. They're in the second wild cards, or excuse me, in the first wild card spot. Well, never mind that. If you take a look at what they are, they're a team that started with a new coach and a number of new players trying to figure out a system, and took some time to figure out that system. And once they figured it out, they've been one of the NHL's best, unquestionably. Like this is not a pull that you would probably want in the first round. Like this to me looks like if you get them, I'm not saying you don't beat that team, but boy, oh boy, they'll take their pound of flesh from you before it's all said and done.
Well, not just that, Sean. I mean, they are eerily familiar to the Florida Panthers team that was 8th last year and then took out the best team regular season.
They don't have anywhere near that.
Not the same kind of high-end skill, but they have the work ethic, Sean, and they have the goaltending is what I mean. I'm not saying their rosters are similar. What I am saying is they are a dangerous opponent for anyone who gets them, whether they're 7th or 8th. And I mean, right now, the way that those guys are playing, who's to say they can't challenge for 3rd in the Central? I mean, they're 7 points behind the Jets. I don't expect them to catch the Jets, but they've got one more head-to-head meeting, right? I mean, I don't know. We were talking with Ryan O'Reilly today, Sean, you and I both separately. I asked Ryan the same thing, and he said, no, we're not just fighting for the wild card. We want to finish as strongly as we can, and there's a lot of belief in that room right now. They're playing an incredible style. Their system is very well suited to them, and they figured it out. They figured it out that they can be offensive when they have the puck, but man, their commitment to defense is exceptional. Their back pressure made life miserable for the Jets. And, that goes back to what you asked me about the speed. The really high-end upper echelon teams, those teams play fast and they take away your time and space. Today, the Jets didn't do a good enough job of getting to the hard areas in front of the net. Yes, they got a redirection goal by Alex Iafallo, beauty of a play, and Mason Appleton was rewarded for a good effort on the power play where the third line was out there with Colin Miller and Dylan Samberg, and they cashed in. But, they're again, it was for me, Sean, far too quiet night for Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor, and all the, the high-end scorers on the Jets.
Ken, let's do this. Give Sweet Lou a shout out. I wanted to touch on something you said there afterwards.
Right on. For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. Tell him Kenny and Renny sent you. 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
This is getting to be a little bit of an old act by me, but I've been flip-flopping between the Pristine Roofing wake-up call as the Jets needing the wake-up call, and then the next time it's they got the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. That's what I did last game, and now we're back to them needing that wake-up call. Clearly tonight, not in the same stratosphere as the hottest team in the NHL. The interesting part about that is I thought there was going to be a pretty good chance that the Jets would do to them what they did to the Minnesota Wild when they came rolling into town as the hottest team in the NHL, and the Jets just absolutely broke them. But no doubt about it, Jets outplayed handily tonight, which means they need the Pristine Roofing wake-up call again. And of course, that means it's time to give North End Rick the wake-up call. Hey, I saw Pristine Roofing in my neighborhood out doing roofs already. So, hey, don't be waiting. If you need a roof this year, call North End Rick. Get him on down your place. He'll tell you everything you need to do as far as roofing, siding, exteriors. 1-204-981-6289. You can always call Pristine Roofing themselves at 1-204-237-7663. And hey, if you need a new roof, you may be the person that gets a free roof from Pristine Roofing and Siding, as they are handing out a free roof this year to someone in need. So give them a call. And if it's not you, if it's someone you know, someone you don't know, get a hold of them. Let them know though, because they're going to be handing out a free roof and they want to make sure it goes to someone extremely deserving. 665 people in the chat room, just one under the number of the beast. I don't know what you people are seeing out there, but I'm going to go by not my numbers because I'm in the control center. I don't know where you are, what kind of filter you've got going on here, the low number filter, but 662 is reflective of what we've been getting totally in total on our shows. Good job showing up afterwards, people. You're not getting too scared of losses. Maybe, Ken, what it has to do is it's getting closer to the playoffs and people are thinking, okay, we need to buck up and handle these losses, and they're not running the way that they have in the past. I'm going to talk about your quick conversation about Connor Hellebuck. I'll say this: last show, I was guilty of. You were guilty of. Rick Bowness was guilty of running the narrative about Connor Hellebuck in a game where he went fairly unchallenged, but made that first early save. And what did we say? Well, it was a great timing save. You give him that credit for it. It's a totally different game if he doesn't make that save. I probably waxed poetic longer on it than anybody else. And I think it's probably one of those times, because when I say nice things like that, people in this chat room usually really agree with me. It's really my best analysis when I'm saying things nice about the Winnipeg Jets. Pumped his tires after last game. If we're going to sit there and we're going to push the narrative that on a night when Connor Hellebuck was not challenged very much, but he made a good save early, that we say he made the timely save, all that kind of stuff. You have to open up to the idea that tonight the Winnipeg Jets were the better team to start that game, the hotter team to start that game. We're out shooting and out chancing, out possessing the Nashville Predators, and that stopped like throwing an anchor out of a car moving at 120 miles an hour. That stopped when Connor Hellebuck led in a goal he probably would have wanted back. If last game Connor Hellebuck was making the timely save, this game he led in a bad goal at the worst possible time. Upon reflection, that kind of turned this game, and the Nashville Predators never looked back after that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good shot by Nyquist. I mean, should Hellebuck have had it, anything that is at his glove that was under the bar, he should probably have, and often does. So, I mean, again, the Jets are not mentally weak enough that a one shot from where it was scored should turn them out of the game. I mean, they got out hustled from there on in. So, again, I don't think Connor Hellebuck had his best. He didn't. I mean, that's accurate. I'm not here proclaiming he had a great outing, but I mean, in the second period where the Jets were bad, he kept them within striking distance. Now, do I think he could have had the first one? For sure. But I also think that there's shared responsibility that player can't get behind the defenseman in that situation. So I don't think it's, if Hellebuck makes the save, the Jets play great and win the game. I know that's not what you said. I'm just here to say.
No, I'm quite honestly saying, if we're going to sit there and say he made
I got no problem
save last game, and we are going to push the narrative that he made the timely save and praise him for that, then it needs to be pointed out when he does the opposite, which is exactly what happened tonight, as much as it hurts some people's feelings for me to say that.
Well, Sean, I just told you that he's given up 23 goals in 7 games. That's a goals against over 3. So I'm not here saying that
you're not saying
he's had a great stretch.
I'm referring to people in the chat room.
What
Sean
I am
is really
saying
bothered.
is,
he says, I will not let this Hellebuck thing rest.
Well,
I think I'm just pointing out what's happening on this night tonight.
Contextually speaking, he's still among the league leaders in all of the important categories. Do I think that this recent stretch is costing him? Josh Morrissey said Connor Hellebuck should be in the Hart discussion. I mean, I would say that this stretch is probably going to eliminate that possibility in a lot of ways, unless Connor goes on a crazy run in his last 12 starts. But I still think he's the Vezina front runner. But he's left, Sean, we talked about this 2 shows ago.
I agree.
He's left the door open for other contenders like Sergei Bobrovsky and other people like Thatcher Demko. Now, Demko's candidacy, Sean, might be hurt because he's going to be injured and out of the lineup now for an undisclosed amount of time. So Hellebuck is going to be in the 58 to 59 start range. He's going to be among the league leaders in goals against average, save percentage, goals saved above expected. So he's still put himself in an excellent position, and the Jets wouldn't be where they are without strong goaltending from Connor Hellebuck. But Laurent Brossoit has done his part and deserves to play down the stretch so that Connor Hellebuck can stay sharp. There's no disputing this. He's not as sharp as he was earlier in the year when it was 2 or fewer almost every single night. We can't stop that. We can't pretend that's not happening. Now, we're also not saying that Connor Hellebuyck didn't do his part to get to this point. So, it's still, context is required. But at the same time, yes, of course. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck has to play great in the big games, and he has in his career, and he has to down the stretch. Otherwise, the Jets don't have a chance to be a first place team. There's no way around that. The Jets, we've said this for a long time, when they get elite level goaltending, they are among the elite teams. But if they get average goaltending and play average defensively and leaky defensively, then they're not beating the upper echelon teams. So for sure, he's got to take his slice of the pie. I'm not here to say goaltending is the reason the Jets are struggling against high-end teams. That's not my viewpoint. Because their stars were nowhere to be found today either. Connor is one of those stars, but he had lots of company again. Same as the game against Vancouver. Their big guns were outplayed by the oppositions.
Just to make it clear, I right now still think Connor Hellebuyck is the walkaway winner of the Vezina Trophy. I don't know why people I can't believe how sensitive people are about this thing. I've been pretty consistent on this, talking about where I feel he is. That I think he's the best goalie in the league. I don't think I ever bring up his name without saying he's one of, if not the best goaltender in the league. People get so butthurt when I say anything about him. Listen, I'm speaking. Hey, this is the truth teller coming out here. If you can't say tonight that Connor Hellebuyck let in a goal that wasn't the best goal and it may have had an effect on this game, then listen, if you need to run and hide and bury your head in the sand, go do that. Connor Hellebuyck, to make things clear, is still, in my opinion, the runaway Vezina Trophy winner so far this season. Has he opened the door a little bit, like Ken said? I made that point on the other show. I'm not going to hide or run away from seeing things that are happening in the game because you don't like the fact that I point them out. Sorry. That's what we're going with this. But to make it clear, I've said this before, number one goalie in the NHL, walking away with that award this year, I'm still able to say on a night where something went wrong, that something went wrong. I don't have any issue with saying that, as much as it hurts some of your feelings.
Let's go to Rick. Let's go to the comments, sir. No,
hold on. There's a comment I really wanted to get to here. Where is it? Oh, no. Okay. Where did you want to go?
I want you to, what was your interpretation of what Rick said? Sorry, for those who didn't hear. So Sean asked about what's, any ideas on what's leading to the consistency issues. Yeah, period. A little bit, period. Not going to share it with you, period. Good try, period. What's your take on that?
I don't know. He's salty right now. He's clearly salty. He's clearly getting a little bit to us, I mean, like, again, this is an obvious question, right? Like, this isn't me, digging up something that's like, wow, hold on. Or as Blake Wheeler used to say, always
smoking
going
gun
for the headlines. You know what I mean? Always going for the headlines. This is an obvious question. They play good. They play bad against Seattle. He comes out and says they play bad. They play great the next night, shut him out 3-0. They play the worst game of his tenure here with the Winnipeg Jets. Yep. And they come out and they shut a team out 3-0. And then they turn around and clearly he wasn't happy here tonight. It does not take Einstein to deduce that, period, that they're not being a very consistent team right now. And B, that he doesn't think they're a very consistent team here right now. So asking about those inconsistencies, where are we going with this? What's happening? To me, I guess that my takeaway from this is he's not very comfortable with where the team is right now, or he's not comfortable with what the answers to those questions are, or he may be a little bit flummoxed on why he's getting these efforts from his team at this stage. And that's not something, put it this way, Rick Bowness, for the most part, is very much the truth teller ahead of Renny by a long shot, will come out and will say the things that he thinks and needs to say. So at times when he doesn't say it, unless he's tipping his cap, you'll ask a question about process or, maybe a little bit of the KFC 57 herbs and spices secret on what makes them a good team, right? You don't expect him to say that.
Right.
I don't think this falls into that category. Them not being able to come out and muster their best effort, or them not having an answer for really good teams that are coming in and taking the game to them is something I think that should be above board and should be talked about, unless you're not really sure that you have the answers right now. So I would say this right now, Rick Bowness, he's going to have some thoughts about it. Maybe it's thoughts that maybe this is one of those times, Ken, he didn't go talk to his players. He came and he talked to the media first, and maybe he wants the players to hear it from his mouth before we and you at home hear about it from him. But I mean, I don't think it's a good sign that he's turning around and saying, like, he would. It came across as salty to me. I felt like Rick Bowness usually is very, very good with the media, and I don't mind someone being salty. Hey, he has every reason to be pissed off. If I have a bad day, I get salty in here with the chat room all the time, right? So Rick Bowness, hey, sometimes truth tells.
We're here for your saltiness, Sean. We're here for your saltiness.
There you go, and I'm here for that saltiness as well. But
usually,
I just look at it in this case as a scenario by which, to me, this is just another sign that not all is well in Jets land. As many people as want to blame this on the flu, as many people want to say it's 17 games to play, lots of time to turn this around. There's a lot of people who love to take a look at the rosy side of things. I don't think Rick Bowness is taking a look at the rosy side of things right now, and I think that response is indicative of that.
Okay, and one more thing, he touched on the fact he didn't go in. He was asked by Murat about Tesh of The Athletic about, was that, that's coaching, was that coaching knowing when not to go into, whether it's talk calmly to your team or let it fester. And Rick said, sometimes the leaders have to do the talking. What did you think of that commentary from Rick?
Well,
do you think he was on the truth teller side? Do you think he wasn't sure he could bite his tongue in that scenario, or is it just as simple as letting the leaders point out the flaws right now and asking more of themselves?
Well, he'd said it. He said it in the answer. It's not always on the coaches, right?
That's what I mean.
I think at this
good
point,
answer.
It is, because at this point, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink, right? And if you're doing all the things that you think you need to do to put the Jets your players in a good spot, and they're not doing it. Hey, I always say this. I had this great interview. I was coming in covering a Major League Soccer game, and I was in Columbus, and it was TFC, Toronto Football Club, and the coach before the game. It was fascinating. I wish NHL coaches did this, but he broke down the entire philosophy of what they were going to try and do in that game. And they went out in the first half of the game and they got 3 goals scored on, and they were scored in exactly the way the coach said his team was going to shut it down. And then he came out before the beginning of the second half, and I asked him, listen, you plan to do this, and this. It clearly didn't work. What happened? And he said, no plan is good if you refuse to work hard enough to execute it, right? There you go. Rick Bowness, I think, is at the stage where he thinks that he's setting the Jets up, and he's just not getting the buy-in or the effort to pull off what he's asking his players to do. And rather than saying, okay, it's okay, and coddle them through this, we're going to get you through this, he's saying, listen, this to me is the message. We've told you guys what you need to do to be better. You're not doing it. At some point, we can't do it for you. So this to me is just a sign of him saying to the room, guys, no more being passengers. Someone needs to get up into the driver's seat, and it's not going to be us, the coaching staff, because it shouldn't be us, the coaching staff.
Yeah, right on. And I think too, that's part of leadership. The Jets leadership has been praised when it's going well. And when they've been up and down, then, the leaders do need to lead. And I think they will be doing that during this time.
Okay. I wanted to move on to this. I did have it there the whole time. Matthew Howe, I thought, had a really great comment here where he says, Sean keeps saying the past 3 months we've been playing bad versus playoff teams. I don't think I said that. I think I very, correctly pointed out their record. It's not 11 games. It's actually 12 games. They are 4-7-1 in those 12 games against playoff teams post-Christmas. I think I did point out that the Jets, a lot of those games aren't necessarily the kind of games you can say were a coin flip. regardless, he makes a really good point here where he says we've had a total of 11 games versus playoff teams. 5 of them were without Scheifele. Now, one thing I thought right before the game where we heard that Mark Scheifele was out with an illness, I remembered conversations we had right here in this space, Ken, where we talked about how much the Jets have struggled when Mark Scheifele isn't in the lineup. Hey, newsflash, people, time to bubble wrap Mark Scheifele and try to make sure that he is as healthy as possible going into the playoffs. Because what I'm seeing right now is when Mark Scheifele is out of the lineup, this is an entirely different team. I had wondered if adding Sean Monahan and some center depth down the middle would have a great effect on that. Tonight is just one game, too small of a sample size to put it in here. But Ken, did you see a team tonight that is struggling when it doesn't have its number one center?
Oh man, it's one of the most prominent things out of the game. There's no way around it. I mean, we've talked about the great job Vladislav Nemestikov has done jumping up in the lineup, but I mean, we can't argue that the Jets are a more dangerous team than Vladislav Nemestikov is the fourth line center and not the first line center. I mean, the Jets also miss Gabriel Velarde. I mean, there's no way around that. They weren't getting much going. I mean, we finally got to see Kyle Connor with Sean Monahan, and it didn't matter because it wasn't a game where, Kyle wasn't as involved as he needs to be in order to get an assessment of how his game might be and might fit with them. It wasn't clicking for Tyler Toffoli the way it did the previous game. Toffoli finishing with, one shot on goal and 2 attempts in total. He did have 5 hits. I like that about Toffoli's game. Even when he's not as involved offensively, you still notice him out there. But there just was no flow with any of the lines. And I mean, up in the press box, Sean, I mean, I know you had a different view from where you are at ice level. I mean, but in the second period, when Nikolai Ehlers made that backhand sauce across the ice when there was a Predators player in front of the net, it was one of those things where you're like, what is happening? I mean, the team was down 2-0. You can't afford to make that kind of a play given what kind of a leash he has been on. Now, I'm glad that Rick Bowness went back to him with Monahan and Connor in the third period, but not a lot of guys had much going. And I mean, this sounds simple. I'm not trying to be hard on Nikolai Ehlers because I love what he brings to the table. But when your coach wants you to make safer decisions, a backhand sauce across the front of the net is not one of those decisions, right? And again, he's not on the Cole Perfetti plan and he's not on a, one and done type of scenario. But if that gets picked off in front of the net and Nashville scores, what do you think the reaction of the coach is going to be? I mean, anyways, it was one of the things that kind of had me scratching my head a little bit. And, Ehlers had 1 shot on net and 3 attempts. But again, the Jets had nobody going. So I'm not here to say, don't try this, try that. That didn't work. Don't ever try it again. But I mean, yes, your original question, the Jets missed Mark Scheifele in all facets of the game. Sean, in the last game, the pass he makes to Kyle Connor is excellent, but the play he makes to Ehlers in the higher slot is an even better play because he had a different passing angle. His explosiveness, his ability to own the board battles down below the offensive goal line. The Jets had almost none of that today, outside of those early shifts, Sean, that you mentioned, where the third line was pinning the opposition in by playing a cycle game. They had none of that from the first line, and really not much of it at all from the second line, or the second scoring line, if we want to call him that. I mean, I thought Morgan Barron was noticeable again, 5 hits in the game. I've really liked a lot about his game. But outside of Mason Appleton, the Jets didn't have a lot of dangerous offensive players. And that would be the concerning part for me in terms of how they're going to be, assessed down the stretch. And I mean, I can't wait for the stretch. It's a beautiful time of the year, and we're going to learn a ton of lessons about the Jets. And the beauty of it is that as much as we learn in the regular season, 2019 showed us, Sean, the Jets had a terrible finish to the year, and then they played a great series against St. Louis that maybe was in their grasp outside of a play where Kevin Hayes thought he had made it 3-0, and he gets cooked by Colton Parayko, and he knocks out his own goal accidentally with a stick as he's falling to the ice. So the beauty of it is the unknown, but you can't be going in expecting to just flip the switch and playing great. That's not going to work on almost any occasion. So the Jets need to be much crisper down the stretch and into the playoffs. And that's exactly what Dylan DeMello said today. Sorry, that's a long curvature from the Jets really miss Scheifele, but the Jets really miss Mark Scheifele. This just in, breaking news. He's one of their best players, if not their best player. So yes, I absolutely noticed he wasn't in the game. And because he wasn't in the game, the Nashville didn't really have to defend against a driving line. The Jets had no driving lines. But Sean, the other thing from today, which is very similar to games against Dallas and Vegas, the Predators have a big physical defense core, Sean. Ryan McDonough, Jeremy Lauzon. Lauzon leads the league in hits. Carrier, very good. Luke Shen, big, strong guy. Mobility galore with Yossi, who is, again, we've talked about Josh needing to be getting more attention in the periphery of the Norris race. Roman Yossi's here to tell you folks he's still in the race. I mean, unbelievable game for Yossi is what I saw. Very active in all ends of the ice. But the Jets didn't get to the blue paint nearly enough. And that's another thing we can glean from when they play really good teams. Sean, what's Boston? Boston's got a great team that defends the front of the net also. That was a struggle for the Jets. So those are the things that we're starting to glean. Now, again, best way to change the narrative is to get rid of it and play better against those teams.
I want to run through some stuff really quickly here. I will say this, and I always say this, whenever people give me the flipping the switch argument for the Jets in 2019 against the St. Louis Blues. They came close, and everyone always talks about what if they scored the goals. I don't go down the what if road there. When you no-show in the final deciding game of the series, you've lost my ability to say that you were right there. By the end of that series, the St. Louis Blues were showing that the Jets weren't in the same building as they were. I think that's the problem with turning the switch, flipping the switch, because the flipping the switch thing, I think, is a little less consistent. You can make a push. If you remember in that series, okay, they flipped the switch, but they didn't do it until game 3, and then they came and won 2, and now it's tied up, and they almost put it aside, and everyone's like, okay, if we would have scored in game 3, for them to not show up in game 6 of that series and go down 4-2, you've lost my goodwill to say you were there and you were right there and you almost won that series if you showed me that in game 6 you couldn't muster anything in what would have been the closeout game of that series.
No, and that's totally fair, Sean. My point is that the Jets fell flat on their face during the stretch, and they found a way to elevate their game. They were down 2-0 and 1-2 on the road. So that was the surprising part in the series.
No doubt.
I'm not saying that they deserve to do it or
it's just that's not less targeted at you and more. I always have people give me the whole 2019, and it's always this what if and this and that. It's like, don't what if me. The next game after that you're saying they would have gone up 3-2, they got destroyed by the St. Louis Blues. Are you going to tell me that then they would have arrived in game 7? Because what St. Louis showed in every series that year is, as the series wore on, they were the better team. They choked out Dallas, even though it went to double overtime. They were far better, the better team against Dallas, even though Dallas had gone up 3-2 in that series. They basically made the Sharks tap out and beat Bruins in 6. Is that what it was?
I thought it was 7 also.
Was that 7? But a handy win in game 7, if I remember correctly. Anyways, well, we digress. There's too many things. I got to get to some things here before we move on. Wanted to bring this up by Top Line Media, who says, felt like the Preds had all the time in the world to break out and send those stretch passes. Not much pressure up front at all. This was a tactic they were using, flipping it to center and skating into it. And what ended up happening is the Jets got caught on that first goal. That wasn't a flip, but it was one of those scenarios where the Predators were getting players down ice and finding a way, whether it was flip it or off the boards or whatever, to get it to those players. They hit the pressure valve release on the Jets in this game. The Jets could not get in on them because they were getting burnt back up ice. This was a good game plan. I know a lot of people talk about out coaching and all this kind of stuff. This was a good game plan that worked for the Predators that eventually backed the Jets off and left them in a position where they couldn't apply the pressure they typically apply. I go back to my comments. When the Jets are not able to apply pressure on a team, or that other team is able to apply equal pressure back, I don't think the Jets have handled it well. We do have to move on, though. Get to the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. You got anything, Ken?
Man, it's a tough go there, Sean, on a lot of level. And honestly, I we generally reserve this for a, play made by a Jets player. But I'm sorry, on this night, Sean, the best play in the Johnston Group got you covered category, it belongs to Philip Forsberg on the back check. He had a wide open tap in, Mason Appleton. Neil Pionk fires it backdoor. Philip Forsberg, who's hustling his ass off from all the way back in the neutral zone, he reaches out his stick, gets just enough of a piece of it to flip it over top of Mason Appleton's stick. Some folks, again, they may not like it, just like when we choose the opposition for save of the game. But Sean, to me, that play is emblematic of everything we talk about in the We've Got You Covered play of the game, even though it didn't involve a Jets player.
I'll say this. I'll give the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game to Mason Appleton for scoring with 10 seconds left, just because now people will look back at this score and think 4-2, it wasn't that dominant of a win. Again, this was no bones about it. The Nashville Predators leaving no question, no doubt who the better team was on the ice here on this night. There you go. That's the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. Kenny and Renny O'Geeson. Hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And while we are talking about Mason Appleton, I just have to say, you and I were talking about it before this. Probably, if you go over the last 3 games, maybe 4, the Jets' best player over that stretch of time, looking really fast, applying a lot of pressure. I actually thought the third line was pretty darn good on this night. Great teamwork, and we wanted to give a quick shout out to the team at Cambrian Credit Union from answering members' calls in less than 1 minute to having all their advisors available by video from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It makes it so easy to be a Cambrian member. It is obvious that the whole team at Cambrian cares about giving you great service. Well done, Cambrian. Okay, moving on now. Did I want to touch? Oh, I just wanted to touch quickly on I'll say this, another night, Morrissey going up against a potential Norris Trophy candidate, and it's another night. This is similar to Quinn Hughes. Josie, no doubt, had the better night. Josie, to be honest with you, Ken, Josie is one of those guys, and I talked about this, about how when I see Elias Pettersson, I really haven't seen the player that everyone talks about being so good. From the times that we've seen Roman Josi playing against the Winnipeg Jets, honestly, I've never thought that he played overly well against the Jets. And I always go back to that 2018 series and say he didn't come close to touching Dustin Byfuglien. Roman Josi showed everything in the toolkit tonight. He was really, really good offensively tonight. Really, really good defensively. Really, really good puck possession wise. Just showed a crazy, crazy calm on this night. He was clearly the best defenseman in this game on this night, and of the kind of echelon of the top defenseman in the league, no doubt. Ken, let's go to the keg save of the game. What do you got?
Just a quick one. I think there was a game, you must not have been there, Sean. You must have been on assignment for hockey night. Didn't Josi have a 5-assist game against the Jets one night a couple of years ago? It was 4 for sure. I thought he might have had 5.
It may have been an assignment night. I'm not. There you go. Rob Mahoney says Sean must not have seen Josie's 5-point game against the Jets. I think you actually nailed that. I may have been out on assignment for that night because, like I said, he's. I feel like someone was asking me how handsome he is in real life because I talked with him after the game. The answer is quite striking. And I don't remember having a conversation getting lost in those eyes at any other time. So I would be thinking 5-assist game. I probably would have been talking to him. I don't remember that. So not sure.
He got my attention that night anyways. He got enough attention for the both. He got enough attention for the both of us on that 5-assist special anyways. No keg save of the game is UC Saros on Mason Appleton on the wraparound. That's to me, it was the Jets were generating almost nothing in that period, and great burst of speed by Appleton in the second, and awesome push from post to post by Saros. Just an awesome job of getting the right skate there. And honestly, Sean, you saw the replay countless times on your monitor. He got there just in the nick of time. Otherwise, he stuffs it in. Like, Appleton did everything right on that play, except Saros just beat him to the post and just beat him in the nick of time. So to me, that was my keg save of the game.
I'm not going to argue with you on that. As much as I like to argue with you, Ken, not going to
You
give you
don't
an
say.
argument on that one tonight. I'm with you, but it doesn't matter if I'm with you, if I'm against you, although it can be more fun when I'm against you. It matters what the people in our chat room have to say. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game, and you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. That brings us to our winner. And you are not going to believe this. You are not going to believe the winner of the keg save of the game. It would be one Maul, who said that he bought tickets. I'm going to tell you this. It's happened already. Maul won once, and it was more valuable for Maul to keep his anonymity than it was for him to collect on the TCB lamplighter. It's the $50 keg gift certificate this time.
Oof.
Maul,
don't leave that on the table, Maul. Don't leave that on the table.
We'll see if he can stack up. I don't know. Maybe he could, because he messages me quite often. Messaged me after the last show. Maybe there's a way we can find a way to get it to him without him pulling back the curtains to find out he's just, old man Wizard of Oz. If that's the case, but Maul, what to do. Direct message me. What's that?
You've protected T. Will's first name, so if Maul's concerned about that, we
know who T. Will
you can keep it in the vault.
But Maul knows I can keep it in the vault. I don't think Maul wants me to know who Maul is. There you go.
Classic right here.
He passes it over.
Liar, Maul. Nice try.
On the table here. But Maul, you know what to do. If you want it, you know how to get a hold of me. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds, full name. Or let's see if we can work something out, or an email. And if I can get that, I'll have the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us, Ken, to the TCB, Trans-Canada Brewing Company lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Oh, man. It's a tough choice again. Honestly, I'm not really. The prettiest goal is definitely Nyquist to Forsberg. That to me is the prettiest goal of the game, and it just was another great example of kind of confusion and just the way the night went for the Jets. So that's why I'm going for it. Honorable mention to Alex Iafallo, who became the 12th forward on the Jets. Now again, Tyler Toffoli, we understand, did not score his 26 goals with the Jets, and Monahan, I think, is up to 8 with the Jets. But the entire forward group, Sean, the entire forward group of regulars is now in double digits for the Winnipeg Jets. Like that's an astronomical number for a team that, at times has had trouble scoring this year. So honorable mention, Alex Iafallo. I'm going with the Philip Forsberg beauty. And I had Forsberg, originally I was going to go Yossi as my first star, but I went Forsberg because of the combination goal, assist, and then the defensive effort. So I'm going to also give him the lamplighter tonight, even though, like I said, pretty goal on the redirect by Iafallo. And yes, Appleton got a reward for a guy who's been playing pretty hard in the last little stretch of game. Last 4 games, he's had, 3 or 4 really good ones for me anyway. Incredible.
Before we move on, I'm taking slander here from T. Will. Not only have I kept his name secret, T. Will says, Kenny, to be fair, I'm very concerned with the security in that vault. So you know what? If I've always said this before, if I'm going to take flack for not keeping it a secret, I might as well just let it go. So here it is, everybody, the reveal you've all been waiting for. T. Will is short for Terwilliger. Terwilliger is the man that you've found here. So next time you see him, make sure you say hi to my good buddy Terwilliger next time you see him. You've been exposed, Terwilliger. Sorry, I held on to it as long as I could. You should probably honor me for having me kept it a secret as long as I have. Ken, I agree.
Beautiful name. Why are we keeping it a secret?
Yeah, it's a great name, Terwilliger.
Come on, T. Will. Come on.
Terwilliger, come on, let it out, Terwilliger. Everyone, when you see him, make sure you refer to him as Terwilliger. He will be known as Terwilliger going forward. Anyways, I agree with you, Ken, on your lamplighter, but it doesn't matter if we agree. Matters what the chat room and Terwilliger thinks. If they just leave us their hashtag lamplighter of the game, they're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Ken and Ren to gift you your very own 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 11290 Kenniston Boulevard, where we will be having our final for this season K&R live podcast. Gonna be great pizza, great food, all that kind of stuff. We are over, last I checked, over 80% sold. So if you're holding on, and it may be less than that. I haven't checked for a couple of days, so it could very well be less than that. There's not many spots.
Get on
left.
it, folks.
So if you're
Get on
going, folks, jump in, finish that off, or I don't know what to say. You'll be left out in the cold, and you don't want that to happen as warm as it is in the city right now. Anyways, winner
you go. Sorry.
Winner of the TCB Lamplighter from last game, another person who's been smearing me in the chat. Hey, if you think there's any favorites played here, all the terrible things that you say about Renny and he's gifting stuff to you, I can't believe it. The winner is Toronto Sports Network 243. I don't think it's a bot. Toronto Sports Network 243. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. I'll need your full name. Show yourself, basically, is what I'm saying. Full name, email, and I will have a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale sent to you, and you will experience that it is the absolute nectar of the gods. Ken, anything you got to say before we go?
Yeah, quick one, folks. We need you to step up your game in the hashtag department. We get a couple more entries. There's prizes there for you to be won for you.
Yeah, don't leave them to people like Terwilliger.
Don't be afraid.
Don't leave them for the Terwilligers of the world, people.
Don't be afraid.
I'm going to leave. I wanted to leave a couple of questions here. These are thoughts to ponder for future shows. Homework, if you will.
Okay.
Renny at one time on the path to being a teacher. So I'm going to try and do that. To me, I have questions, and it's something I think that we should look forward. Basically, the last half of the season, there's questions. Are the Jets doing a mini slide of what they did last year and what we're seeing from those teams? You can talk that over. You can, think of it yourself. I wonder about this too. Talked about this. The Winnipeg Jets showed their system and how good it was earlier on in the year. The problem with having a great system is people dig into it. And I wonder if what we're seeing from the Jets the last little while, the way that I remember the way that Boston was able to play and relieve the pressure that the Winnipeg Jets applied tonight, another night where they were able to do that. Talked about Vancouver and what they were doing well. Question is, are really good teams who need to dig into the Jet system, figuring out the system. And one final question, hockey gets harder as the year goes on. And I wonder if the Jet system that was so ironclad at the beginning of the year looked that way because teams had not yet arrived on their game is what we're seeing from the Winnipeg Jets right now. The fact that the rest of the league has upped their game and it's exposing cracks in the system that we may not have seen before. Those are things that I have been pondering as of late. Andy Johnson says, how do you generate scoring when the games start to mean more? It's a good,
that's another piece of homework. We might dig into that one here next game.
Because really that's the other issue that we've seen with the
sure.
Winnipeg Jets is their inability to, it's not just losing to the better teams. It is the inability to generate scoring against the better teams. Anyways, that's it for me. Ken, great job here tonight. Great job by the chat room. Even a guy like Terwilliger on this night seemed to be on fire. But you know who's always on fire are the people who keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to them for keeping and fighting to keep the conversation going in this space. For the rest of you, Jets turn around and get back to one of those lower echelon teams in the league. I know T Shu took issue with me saying that. Dude, there's echelons. Some teams make the playoffs, some don't. I don't know how you've got such a problem with it, but I'm going to say it. Lower echelon team coming into the league, or excuse me, coming into Winnipeg. Jets have had really, really good luck against those kind of teams. I would expect it to continue. We'll see if it happens after the next game. We'll join you right here. See you later, everybody.